Imagine pushing a boulder up a hill for eternity. Now imagine being happy about it. That's not madness. That's the most radical philosophy ever written. In 1942, in the middle of the most destructive war in human history, a 28-year-old French-Algerian writer published an essay that ended with one of the strangest sentences in the history of philosophy. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. Not at peace, not resigned. Happy. The writer was Albert Camus. The essay was The Myth of Sisyphus. And the argument he made in the shadow of occupation, genocide, and the collapse of every certainty Europe had ever held was that the absence of meaning is not a reason to despair. It is a reason to live more fully than ever before, not despite the absurdity. Because of it. This is either the most delusional thing a philosopher has ever said, or the most liberating. 80 years later, I think it is the latter. And the distance between those two readings is exactly what makes Camus worth taking seriously. Albert Camus was born in 1913 in Mondovi, French Algeria. His father was killed in the Battle of the Marne when Camus was less than a year old. His mother was illiterate and nearly deaf. They lived in a two-room apartment in the working-class Belcourt district of Algiers. No electricity, no running water, no books. He was not supposed to become anything. A school teacher named Louis Germain recognized his intelligence and pushed him toward a scholarship. Without Germain, there is no Camus. He acknowledged this openly for the rest of his life, and when he won the Nobel Prize in 1957, the first letter he wrote was to his old teacher. Camus studied philosophy at the University of Algiers, but was barred from the aggregation exam by tuberculosis, a disease that would shadow him for the rest of his life. He turned to writing and journalism. He joined the French resistance during the occupation, editing the underground newspaper Combat. He wrote novels, plays, and essays while living under constant threat of arrest. He was not writing from a university library. He was writing from inside the catastrophe. And the question that consumed him was not abstract. It was immediate, personal, and deadly serious. If the universe has no inherent meaning, if there is no God, no cosmic plan, no guaranteed purpose, then why should a person go on living? Camus gave this confrontation a name. He called it the absurd. The absurd, for Camus, is not a property of the universe. It is not a property of the human being. It is what happens when the two collide. We are creatures who demand meaning, who need reasons, purposes, narratives that make sense of our suffering, and the universe offers none. It is not cruel, it is not hostile, it is simply silent. We scream our questions into a void, and the void does not even bother to refuse us. It just says nothing. The absurd is the gap between the question and the silence, between our need for order and the world's radical indifference to that need. It is not a conclusion. It is a condition, the condition of being a meaning-seeking creature in a universe that has no meaning to give. Camus believed that most people spend their lives avoiding this confrontation. We distract ourselves. We build systems of belief, religious, political, philosophical, that promise the meaning the universe withholds. We scroll, we consume, we stay busy. Anything to avoid the silence. But Camus thought the honest response was different. The honest response was to look directly at the absurd and refuse to look away, to live with it, not to resolve it, because it cannot be resolved, but to hold it fully, without flinching. In The Myth of Sisyphus, Camus identifies 3 ways people typically respond to the absurd. He rejects 2 of them. The first response is physical suicide. If life has no meaning, why continue? Camus takes this question with absolute seriousness. He opens the essay by calling it the only truly serious philosophical problem. But he rejects suicide not on moral grounds, but on logical ones. Suicide does not solve the absurd. It simply eliminates one of the 2 terms. The tension between the human need for meaning and the universe's silence requires both a questioning mind and a silent universe. Kill the mind and the question disappears, but so does the only consciousness capable of defying the silence. Suicide is not a response to the absurd, it is a surrender to it. The second response is what Camus calls philosophical suicide, the leap of faith. This is what Kierkegaard did when he embraced Christianity. What the existentialist philosophers did when they declared that meaning must exist even if reason cannot find it. Camus admired Kierkegaard, but he accused him of cheating. The leap of faith solves the problem by pretending the silence speaks after all, by inventing a meaning that the universe never provided. It escapes the absurd not by facing it, but by closing its eyes. The third response, the one Camus endorses, is revolt. Not political revolt, though Camus lived that too. Philosophical revolt. The decision to go on living, fully aware that life has no guaranteed meaning, and to create value anyway, not because the universe demands it, but because you choose it. To live without appeal, without the safety net of cosmic purpose, and to find in that very freedom a reason to keep going. This is where Sisyphus enters. In Greek mythology, Sisyphus was a king of Corinth, cunning, defiant, and reckless enough to cheat death itself. Twice he escaped the underworld through trickery. The gods, unamused, gave him a punishment designed to be the ultimate expression of futility. He would push a boulder to the top of a mountain, and the moment it reached the summit, it would roll back down. He would descend, retrieve it, and push it up again. Forever. No progress, no completion, no rest. Just the rock, the slope, and the eternal return to the bottom. For most readers of Greek myth, Sisyphus is a cautionary tale about hubris. For Camus, he is the human condition made visible. Because Camus saw that we are all Sisyphus. We go to work, come home, go to work again. We build things that will be forgotten. We love people who will die. We construct meaning in a universe that will eventually erase every trace of us. The rock always rolls back down. The project finishes and another one begins. The inbox empties and fills again. Monday follows Monday follows Monday. If you see only the repetition, it looks like hell. But Camus asks you to see something else. The most important moment in the myth, Camus argues, is not the push. It is the walk back down. That is the moment when Sisyphus is conscious. The rock is behind him, already rolling to the bottom. He has nothing to do but descend, and in that descent, in that interval between effort and effort, he can see his situation clearly. He knows the rock will be there. He knows he will push it again. He knows there is no escape, no reprieve, no final summit. And this is where Camus makes his radical claim. At each of those moments when he leaves the heights and gradually sinks toward the lairs of the gods, he is superior to his fate. He is stronger than his rock. Sisyphus is free, not because his punishment has ended, but because he has refused to let it define him. He sees the absurdity of his situation with total clarity, and he does not collapse under it. He does not beg the gods for mercy. He does not pretend the rock has a purpose. He simply walks back down, picks it up, and pushes again. Fully aware, fully alive, fully defiant. The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. That last line is not an argument, it is a declaration. Camus is not saying Sisyphus should be happy, or that happiness is the logical conclusion. He is saying, imagine it, choose to see it. Because in a universe without inherent meaning, the act of imagining, of choosing, is itself the rebellion. Now, the strongest objection. And it is worth taking seriously. Isn't this just nihilism in a French accent? Isn't Camus simply saying nothing matters, so do whatever you want? And if so, isn't that dangerous, a philosophy that removes all moral obligation and replaces it with a shrug? The confusion is understandable. But it misses something essential. Nihilism says, nothing matters, therefore nothing is worth doing. Camus says the opposite, nothing is guaranteed to matter. Therefore what you choose to do matters enormously, because you are the one who gives it weight. For the nihilist, the absence of cosmic meaning is the end of the conversation. For Camus, it is the beginning. If the universe does not hand you a purpose, then every purpose you adopt is freely chosen. Every value you hold is genuinely yours. Every act of creation, of love, of defiance against the silence, these are not obligations imposed from above. They are gifts you give yourself, and they are more honest, more authentic, than any meaning borrowed from a system you never questioned. Camus was deeply moral. He opposed the death penalty. He spoke against totalitarianism when it was fashionable among French intellectuals to excuse it. He broke with Sartre over the question of whether revolutionary violence could be justified. He believed that human solidarity, the recognition that we are all in this absurd situation together, was the foundation of ethics. Absurdism does not lead to apathy. It leads to engagement, but engagement without illusion. And that distinction is everything. Camus died in a car accident in 1960, at the age of 46. He had a train ticket in his pocket. He had decided at the last minute to drive with his publisher instead. He was carrying an unfinished manuscript, a novel about his childhood called The First Man, in his briefcase. It was published posthumously 35 years later. There is something almost unbearably absurd about the absurdist dying by accident. But Camus would not have found it ironic. He would have found it consistent. The universe does not arrange things for narrative satisfaction. It does not give you a meaningful death just because you wrote meaningfully about life. Things happen. The rock rolls back down. Here we are, 66 years after his death, still reading him, still arguing about him, still finding in his work something that speaks to the particular variety of meaninglessness that defines our own era, the algorithmic void, the infinite scroll, the sense that we are all pushing rocks up hills that no one asked us to climb. Camus would not have been surprised by the loneliness epidemic, or the crisis of meaning, or the strange emptiness that persists despite unprecedented comfort. He would have recognized it immediately. It is what happens when a civilization optimizes for pleasure and forgets about purpose, and then discovers that pleasure without purpose is just another form of the absurd. There is a moment, maybe you have had it, when you realize that the things you do every day will not culminate in some grand resolution, that the email you answered this morning will lead to another email, that the problem you solved at work will be replaced by another problem, that the laundry you folded will be dirty again by Thursday. This is either depressing or liberating, and the difference depends entirely on you. Camus' Sisyphus does not push the rock because someone promised him it would stay at the top. He pushes it because pushing it is what he does. Because the effort is his, and the mountain is his, and the walk back down, that interval of pure, clear consciousness, belongs to no one else. The examined life does not require that you find a guaranteed meaning. It requires that you keep looking, keep pushing with your eyes open. And that you find, in the pushing itself, something that no God and no universe needs to validate. The rock will roll back down. It always does. But Sisyphus is walking back down the mountain right now, and there is something in his face that looks, against all logic, like joy. Camus asks you to see it. I think he is right.